Sheriff Michael Dawson slammed the trunk of his pickup, surveying the charming colonial he just purchased in Oak Ridge Estates. 25 years in law enforcement, the last bullet still lodged near his spine from the courthouse shooting 3 years ago, and he'd finally achieved his dream position as county sheriff of Pinewood Valley. The white picket fence and manicured lawn represented everything he'd sacrificed for: stability, respectability, peace. His new neighbor, Eleanor Whitfield, a retired high school principal with sharp eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, approached with a welcome basket and a warning. "This isn't like your apartment downtown, Sheriff," she said, handing him soda muffins and a 3-ring binder. "The HOA here has teeth." Mike laughed, tucking the binder under his arm without opening it. "Ma'am, I've faced down meth dealers and motorcycle gangs. I think I can handle a homeowners association." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. Gerald Hoffman runs the board. Former military, never made it past captain. Compensates accordingly. His enforcement committee cited the Johnsons 17 times last year for unauthorized wind chimes. Mike thanked her for the muffins and the intel, confident that his badge would command respect even in this suburban fiefdom. His weathered hands had subdued violent criminals and comforted victims. Surely they could handle planting regulation-approved petunias. That night, as fireflies danced across his new backyard, Mike's phone buzzed with a county emergency. He left his half-unpacked boxes behind, unaware that his hastily parked cruiser straddling the sidewalk had already been photographed, documented, and entered into Gerald Hoffman's meticulously maintained violation database. Section 8.3, Paragraph 4. No commercial or emergency vehicles may be parked in residential driveways overnight. Gerald Hoffman recited from memory during the monthly HOA meeting, clicking to a high-resolution photo of Sheriff Dawson's cruiser. "Our newest resident seems to think his position places him above our community standards." The committee members nodded solemnly, except for Eleanor, who sighed. "He's the county sheriff, Gerald. The vehicle is essential to his work." "The covenant makes no exceptions for occupation," Gerald replied, straightening his perfectly pressed polo shirt with HOA board president embroidered on the chest. "First it's police cars, then it's landscaping trucks and delivery vans. Property values plummet, crime increases, civilization crumbles." When Mike returned home 3 days later, bleary-eyed from tracking a missing teenager who'd thankfully been found safe, his porch resembled a small post office. 7 different violation notices, each in a different color envelope, detailed his transgressions: unauthorized vehicle, unapproved mailbox, standard USPS blue, not Oak Ridge bronze, holiday lights in March, the single strand he used to illuminate his moving boxes, and a garbage can visible from the street by approximately 7 inches. Mike crumpled the notices and collapsed into his still unpacked living room, falling asleep before he could care. The pattern continued through spring. Mike saving lives and maintaining county peace, while his own home became a battlefield of passive-aggressive notes and certified letters. The turning point came when he returned from a 48-hour manhunt to find his prized vintage motorcycle, a restoration project he'd worked on with his late father, had been towed from his own garage after a routine inspection. Noted it wasn't on the approved vehicle list. When Mike called the HOA management company, the representative's voice dripped with rehearsed condescension. "Perhaps county law enforcement has different standards, Sheriff Dawson, but in Oak Ridge Estates, rules aren't just suggestions." The $1,200 retrieval fee from the impound lot was the final straw. Mike was kneeling in his garden on a rare Saturday off, methodically pulling weeds while plotting how to legally end Gerald Hoffman's reign of suburban terror, when the black SUV rolled up. It gleamed with fresh wax, Oak Ridge HOA 1-4C Mean TDIVISION, emblazoned on its sides in gold lettering that matched the official-looking badges worn by the 2 men who emerged. The taller man, beefy with a military-style crew cut, approached while his partner hung back, hand resting on what appeared to be a holstered sidearm. Mike's trained eye caught the too shiny badge, the overly starched uniform, the affected swagger of someone playing dress-up as authority. "Michael James Dawson?" The man barked, assuming a wide stance. "I'm Chief Enforcement Officer Randall Dixon. This is Deputy Enforcement Officer Marcus Wells. You've accumulated 17 unresolved violations and $2,950 in unpaid fines. We're authorized by the HOA board to escort you to the community office for processing." Mike slowly stood, garden soil still clinging to his calloused hands. 25 years of handling volatile situations had taught him to recognize dangerous escalation. These weren't just overzealous HOA representatives. The handcuffs visible on Dixon's belt and the implied weapon suggested something far more concerning. "Let me just wash up and grab my ID," Mike replied calmly, his mind calculating options. Inside, he quickly phoned Deputy Garcia. "Sarah, I need 2 units at 1478 Oak Ridge Drive. Silent approach. Possible armed individuals impersonating law enforcement." He then retrieved his badge from his lockbox and slipped his backup service weapon into an ankle holster, covering it with his jeans. Through the window, he watched the 2 men pacing impatiently. Dixon was speaking aggressively into a radio, words like resistance and extraction floating through the spring air. Mike stepped onto his porch, hands visible, stance casual but ready. "Gentlemen, before we go anywhere, I'd like to see some identification. Real identification." Dixon thrust a laminated card toward Mike. "Oak Ridge Estates grants us full authority to enforce covenant violations, including detention of non-compliant residents. Your continued disregard for community standards has left us no choice." Mike examined the ID card. An impressive forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. "Interesting. And these uniforms, badges, and what appears to be a firearm, those are all authorized by a Homeowners Association. We're licensed security professionals." Wells interjected nervously, his hand still hovering near his hip. "Licensed to detain citizens, to make arrests?" Mike asked, voice deceptively soft. "Because I've been in law enforcement for a quarter century. And I'm pretty sure those powers are reserved for actual peace officers." Dixon's face hardened. "Final warning, Dawson. Come voluntarily, or we'll employ necessary measures." As Dixon reached for his handcuffs, Mike calmly pulled aside his jacket to reveal his sheriff's badge. "Here's my final warning. I'm Sheriff Michael Dawson. You're impersonating peace officers, attempting unlawful detention, and I suspect carrying weapons illegally. Drop to your knees and place your hands behind your heads. Now." The color drained from Wells's face, but Dixon lunged forward, only to freeze as 3 patrol cars silently glided into view, deputies emerging with weapons drawn. "You can't do this," Dixon sputtered as Deputy Garcia expertly cuffed him. "We have authority from the board. Gerald Hoffman authorized everything." "Funny thing about Gerald," Mike replied, picking a stray garden weed from his sleeve. "He's not actually allowed to create his own private police force. Real shocking, I know." The community center buzzed with barely contained fury as over 200 Oak Ridge residents packed the emergency meeting. On stage, Mike stood in his full sheriff's uniform beside County Prosecutor Elaine Chen, who methodically outlined the charges against Gerald Hoffman and his enforcement committee. Impersonating peace officers, false imprisonment, extortion, illegal towing operations, unauthorized entry of private property, she read from a document. And perhaps most absurdly, creating false government documents when they forged badges and identification cards. Eleanor Whitfield stood up from the front row. "What about our fines? The thousands some of us have paid over the years." Prosecutor Chen smiled tightly. "The investigation has uncovered that approximately 70% of collected fines were diverted to a company called Heritage Security, consultants owned by Gerald Hoffman's brother-in-law. We'll be pursuing full restitution." The crowd erupted in scandalized chatter. When Mike took the microphone, the room quieted instantly. "I spent my career protecting this county and its citizens. I never expected that my toughest criminals would be wearing polo shirts and measuring grass height with rulers." Scattered laughter broke the tension. "But there's a serious point here. When we give someone authority without adequate oversight, abuses inevitably follow. 6 months later, Mike hosted the first sheriff's community barbecue in his backyard, complete with his restored vintage motorcycle proudly displayed on the lawn. Children played on newly installed basketball hoops that would have been forbidden under the old regime. Eleanor and her garden club showcased previously banned native wildflowers. The new HOA board, elected with unprecedented community participation, had simplified the covenant from 147 pages to 12, focusing on safety and community well-being rather than aesthetic control. As twilight fell, Mike found himself sharing a beer with Marcus Wells, the younger of the fake officers, who had received probation in exchange for testimony against Hoffman and Dixon. "I really believed it was legal," Wells admitted. Hoffman said the HOA had special county authorization. Mike nodded. "Power corrupts when no one questions it. That's why I chose to stay, to question it." Later, as neighbors lingered around fire pit conversations, Mike's emergency phone buzzed. A multi-car accident on the interstate needed his attention. As he quietly gathered his things to leave, 6 different neighbors approached to help clean up, insisting he go where he was needed. Walking to his cruiser, now legally parked in his driveway thanks to the revised covenant, Mike reflected that sometimes the most important communities to protect are the ones right outside your front door. On his dashboard, he'd taped a small reminder: authority without compassion creates enemies, not allies, and never try to handcuff someone until you're absolutely sure they don't outrank you.